On a crisp morning, August 17, 1943, at precisely 10:15, General der Jagdflieger Adolf Galland stood on the windswept platform of Insterburg Station in East Prussia, his eyes fixed on Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring as he boarded his lavish, custom-fitted train, the Asian Sonderzug. The two had just concluded a tense, high-stakes conference at Rintel Heath, dissecting Luftwaffe fighter strategies amid escalating Allied air campaigns. With minutes to spare before the train's departure, Galland seized the moment to deliver urgent intelligence that could reshape the air war. Evidence of American fighter aircraft penetrating unprecedented depths of German airspace. Earlier that day, Luftwaffe squadrons had engaged a massive American bombing offensive targeting the industrial hubs of Regensburg and Schweinfurt. The operation followed a familiar script initially. German fighters loitered near the Reich's western borders, waiting for the predictable moment when American escort fighters, Republic P-37 Thunderbolts, exhausted their fuel and peeled back toward England. Left vulnerable, the U.S. bomber formations pressed deeper into Germany, where Luftwaffe units launched ferocious assaults. But then, defying all expectations, new American fighters materialized over central Germany, more than 150 miles beyond any known escort range. These were not stragglers or misidentified planes. They were Lockheed P-38 Lightnings, equipped with external drop tanks that extended their operational radius dramatically. Galland had meticulously compiled reports from squadron commanders across the Reich, piecing together a clear and alarming picture. The P-38s, leveraging their drop tanks, had engaged German fighters over Schweinfurt and Regensburg, targets presumed safely beyond escort reach. This technological leap nullified the Luftwaffe's core tactical doctrine, which relied on exploiting the limited range of Allied escorts. Approaching Göring on the platform, Galland laid out the evidence with precision. Multiple corroborated sightings of P-38s actively dogfighting deep in German territory. The drop tanks, he explained, allowed these fighters to accompany bombers far beyond previous limits, shattering the assumption that German interceptors could attack unmolested once escorts withdrew. Göring's reaction was immediate and visceral. His face reddened, his voice climbed, and he dismissed the intelligence outright. American fighters reaching central Germany? Impossible. He posited that these must be damaged aircraft, perhaps hit over France or Belgium, gliding eastward on momentum from high altitudes. They were anomalies, not proof of a strategic shift, Galland countered, detailing the mechanics of drop tanks and emphasizing the consistency of reports from disparate units, all describing fully combat-capable P-38s, not crippled stragglers. Göring cut him off, his tone brooking no dissent. It was physically unfeasible for American fighters to penetrate that far, he declared, and he issued a formal order. The Luftwaffe would officially deny that U.S. fighters had reached central Germany. This was not a discussion, it was doctrine. Galland, a seasoned combat pilot with a reputation for blunt honesty, understood the gravity of Göring's denial. With a smile later described by witnesses as both sardonic and resigned, he replied, "Orders are orders, sir." As the train's whistle pierced the air and it rumbled out of Insterburg, Galland stood motionless, the weight of the moment settling on him. He knew the Luftwaffe had just missed a critical opportunity to adapt to a threat that would ultimately dismantle it. Göring's refusal to confront reality would condemn thousands of German pilots to face an enemy their leadership insisted could not exist. The consequences unfolded with brutal clarity that very day. During the Regensburg-Schweinfurt raids, the Luftwaffe lost approximately 25 to 27 fighters, a significant portion to the very P-38 escorts Göring had declared impossible. The twin missions marked a turning point in the air war. For the first time, American B-17 and B-24 bombers penetrated deep into the Reich under continuous fighter protection, challenging the Luftwaffe's foundational strategy. German pilots, trained to wait for escorts to turn back, found themselves ambushed by P-38s diving from high altitudes at ranges previously deemed unattainable. The day's toll was stark. 60 U.S. bombers destroyed, but German fighter losses and pilot casualties were equally severe, signaling a shift in the balance of air power. The raids exposed a new reality. American escorts could now appear anywhere, at any time, far deeper than Luftwaffe planners had anticipated. The old playbook, waiting for escorts to exhaust their fuel, was obsolete. Squadron commanders reported chaotic engagements, with P-38s exploiting their extended range to outmaneuver and outlast German interceptors. Galland, digesting these reports, recognized the strategic earthquake. The Luftwaffe needed immediate tactical and production overhauls to survive. 3 weeks later, on September 6, 1943, another disastrous encounter underscored Galland's warnings. A U.S. B-17 formation struck Stuttgart, escorted by P-38s reaching into southern Germany. Major Egon Meyer, commander of Jagdgeschwader II and a pioneer of head-on attacks against heavy bombers, led the interception. With 57 kills, Meyer was among Germany's elite, his frontal assault tactic minimizing exposure to bombers' defensive fire. His squadron executed the plan, scoring hits on several B-17s. But as they repositioned, P-38 escorts, positioned high above and trailing the bomber stream, dove into the fray. The German formation scattered under the onslaught. 3 fighters were shot down in the initial pass, their pilots killed or captured. Meyer himself narrowly escaped when a P-38 latched onto his Messerschmitt Bf-109's tail. Pushing his plane into a near-vertical dive, he leveraged the Bf-109's lighter frame to outrun the heavier Lightning. But 5 of his men were not so fortunate. The mission yielded no confirmed bomber kills, a stinging defeat. By October 1943, the pattern was undeniable. American bombers, now routinely escorted by long-range fighters, struck targets across Germany with impunity. Göring's insistence that such escorts were impossible left Luftwaffe pilots clinging to outdated tactics. They planned attacks expecting escorts to withdraw, only to be met by P-38s or, increasingly, other fighters, materializing over the heart of the Reich. On October 14, 1943, the second Schweinfurt raid, later dubbed Black Thursday, epitomized the crisis. The Americans lost 60 bombers, a crippling 9% of their force, with 600 aircrew killed or captured. But the Luftwaffe paid dearly. 38 fighters destroyed, with dozens of pilots killed or wounded. The exchange rate, once favoring Germans at 3 to 4 bombers per fighter, was nearing 1.1. A path to attrition the Luftwaffe could not sustain. The loss of aces further eroded German capabilities. On December 4, 1943, Hauptmann Hermann Friedrich Hannes Lütt of Jagdgeschwader III, with 131 victories, was shot down near Dordrecht, Netherlands, by P-47s of the 352nd Fighter Group. At 23, Lütt was among the Luftwaffe's most decorated pilots, his death a blow to morale and expertise. Such losses were not mere statistics. They represented the depletion of the Luftwaffe's intellectual capital, the veteran pilots who could mentor novices and devise effective counters to Allied tactics. Galland, acutely aware of the mathematics, compiled a detailed report in November 1943, charting fighter losses from June to October: 87 in June, 106 in July, 174 in August, 193 in September, and 224 in October. The trajectory was catastrophic. Worse, the Luftwaffe's pilot pool was skewing dangerously toward inexperience. In June, 60% of fighter pilots had over 6 months of combat experience. By October, only 40% did. The training pipeline, already strained, could not produce replacements fast enough to offset losses. Galland warned that within 6 months, by spring 1944, the Luftwaffe's fighter arm would reach a breaking point where casualties would outstrip the ability to field trained pilots. Beyond that, collapse was inevitable. He submitted the report to Goring, the Air Ministry and other senior leaders, pleading for action, increase fighter production, overhaul training, and fast-track the Messerschmitt Me 260U jet fighter, whose speed could disrupt Allied escort screens. The response was silence. Goring, entrenched in his August denial, refused to acknowledge the crisis. Ministry directives called for improved morale and bolder attacks, sidestepping the root issues, numerical inferiority, dwindling pilot quality, and an enemy leveraging superior technology and training. Galland's weekly updates, detailing U.S. fighters' extended reach, the obsolescence of waiting tactics, and the urgent need for jets, went unanswered. The Luftwaffe's plight deepened in late 1943, and a new threat emerged that dwarfed even the P-38's impact. On December 1st, 1943, the North American P-51 Mustang entered combat over Europe, redefining the air war. Early Mustangs, powered by Allison engines, had been limited to low-altitude roles like reconnaissance and ground attack, posing no threat to high-altitude bomber escorts. German intelligence had dismissed them accordingly. But the introduction of the British Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, with its 2-stage supercharger, transformed the P-51 into a game-changer. Capable of matching German fighters' altitude, outpacing them in speed and rivaling their agility, the P-51B, fitted with drop tanks, boasted a range exceeding 800 miles. This put every German industrial target, including Berlin, 600 miles from England, within reach of fully escorted daylight raids. The 354th Fighter Group, based at Boxted, England, flew the first P-51B missions in early December, despite pilots having minimal time in the aircraft. On December 5th, they escorted bombers to Amiens, France. On December 11th to Emden on Germany's coast. And on December 13th to Kiel, 240 miles inside Germany, on a 480-mile round trip. In a 4.5-hour mission, 55 P-51s shielded B-17s, downing 6 German fighters without loss while bombers struck U-boat facilities. The P-51's intuitive handling and forgiving nature allowed even green pilots to excel, amplifying its impact. Galland, recognizing the Mustang's revolutionary potential, flew to Berlin in late December to confront Goring, armed with technical data, performance metrics, and combat accounts. He outlined the P-51's superiority, faster than Bf-109s and Focke-Wulf FW-190s at all altitudes, agile in dogfights, and capable of escorting bombers to any German target. He urged emergency measures, prioritize fighter production, expedite Me 262 development, and bolster training despite fuel shortages. Goring waved off the concerns, insisting the P-51 was just another American plane. German pilots' skill and courage, he claimed, would triumph. Galland pressed, presenting hard evidence. But Goring ended the meeting, unmoved. The American bombing campaign intensified through January and February 1944, with P-51s proliferating. Escorting raids to Frankfurt, Leipzig, and central Germany, they tipped the scales decisively. On February 20-25, 1944, Operation Argument, Big Week, unleashed over 3,500 bombers on German aircraft factories, escorted by P-38s, P-47s, and P-51s. The Luftwaffe committed every available fighter, with aces flying multiple daily sorties and novices rushed into battle. Losses were apocalyptic. 262 fighters destroyed, 180 damaged beyond quick repair, and approximately 100 pilots killed, 90 wounded, 43 missing. Among them were luminaries like Egon Mayer, 102 victories, age 29, killed March 2nd by P-37s over France, and Kurt Ubben, 1 in 10 victories, age 24, downed February 22nd over Braunschweig. Galland watched the casualty lists with growing dread. A competent fighter pilot required 6 months of training, a skilled one a year, an ace 2. Yet Germany was losing veterans with years of experience, replacing them with recruits averaging 200 hours or less, some as low as 150, against Allied pilots with 400-500 hours. New German pilots survived an average of 5 missions before death or injury, a statistic that underscored the Luftwaffe's unraveling. The training crisis had deep roots. In 1939, the Luftwaffe's training system was built for short, decisive campaigns, assuming veteran pilots would survive to mentor recruits, fuel would be plentiful, and airfields secure. By 1944, these assumptions had collapsed. Veterans died faster than they could train others. Fuel cuts slashed training hours. Allied raids targeted airfields, killing instructors and destroying planes. Galland proposed diverting experienced pilots to instruct, increasing fuel for schools, and shortening combat tours to preserve aces for training. All requests were denied. Goring prioritized frontline operations, deeming training a luxury Germany couldn't afford amid daily raids, a short-sighted policy that ensured long-term collapse. The Allies capitalized ruthlessly. In January 1944, 8th Air Force Commander General Jimmy Doolittle shifted escort tactics, freeing fighters to hunt Luftwaffe planes aggressively. P-51s swept ahead of bombers, strafed airfields, and pursued Germans during takeoff, assembly, combat, and retreat. No phase of a mission was safe. On March 4, 1944, over 600 bombers hit Berlin, escorted by 174 P-51s on a 100-mile round trip, downing 16. German fighters for 4 losses, they struck the Reich's heart, shattering Göring's 1940 boast that Berlin would never be bombed. Privately, he reportedly admitted defeat upon seeing Mustangs overhead, but publicly maintained the Luftwaffe's invincibility. By April 1944, Galland bypassed Göring, filing a scathing report to High Command on April 27th. It detailed 500 aircraft and 400 pilots lost in recent operations, over 1,000 pilots gone since January, and enemy ratios of 6:1. Allied pilot training with 400-500 hours far outstripped Germany's dwindling 150-200. Fuel shortages and airfield attacks had gutted training infrastructure. Galland valued one Me-262 jet over 5 Bf-109s for its ability to outrun escorts, but Hitler's insistence on developing it as a bomber delayed its fighter role until late 1944, too late to matter. Losses mounted, 2,262 pilots January-May, with March alone crippling elite units like Jagdgeschwader 11, 28 pilots in 3 weeks, and Jagdgeschwader 3, 31. Industrial disparities widened. The U.S. replaced 100 fighters in days, Britain 50 bombers in a week, while Germany struggled to replace 10 fighters monthly. On June 6, 1944, Operation Overlord, Normandy, exposed Luftwaffe weakness. Luftflotte 3 mustered 319 sorties against 14,674 Allied ones. Oberst Joseph Pips Priller, 101 victories and wingman. Heinz Wodarczyk strafed Sword Beach in 2 FW-190s, the only direct fighter response to history's largest amphibious invasion, post-Normandy. Losses soared. 300-plus fighters in June, 400-plus in July, 500-plus in August. Production hit 1,500 fighters monthly, but fuel, parts, and pilots were scarce. Daily pilot deaths reached 50. Training graduated 30 weekly. New pilots with minimal skills were likened to lambs sent to slaughter. Galland fought to adapt, advocating Me-262s, better training, and new tactics. Flying an unauthorized FW-190 mission over Magdeburg in spring 1944, he targeted a bomber, but was jumped by 4 P-51s within seconds. Escaping via a smoke ruse, he grasped the escort's overwhelming presence. By autumn, the Luftwaffe's fighter arm was a shell. Squadrons existed on paper, grounded by fuel, flown by novices, and outmatched. On November 2, 1944, Galland sent 500 fighters against 975 bombers and 800 escorts, 600 P-51s, losing 98 planes and 78 pilots to the Allies' 50 losses. Hitler redirected fighters to the doomed Ardennes offensive, canceling Galland's planned big blow. On January 13, 1945, Göring sacked Galland after the fighter pilots' revolt, accusing him of defeatism. Under house arrest, facing SS probes, Galland was saved by Hitler, who tasked him with leading Jagdverband 44, an elite Me-262 unit with aces like Johannes Steinhoff, 176 kills, Gerhard Barkhorn, 301, and Heinz Beer, 220. The Me-262 was a marvel, 540 Meche, 430mm cannons, unmatched acceleration. JV-44 claimed 45 allies in March-April 1945. Galland's first jet mission, March 31st, down to B-26 near Neuburg. On April 26, hit by Lieutenant James Finnegan's P-47 while attacking bombers, he crash-landed, injuring his knee. Steinhoff assumed command. Germany surrendered May 8th Galland's record. 104 victories, 705 missions, 4 bailouts. Post-war, he was a POW until 1947, advised Argentina's Air Force, and consulted in Germany. His 1954 memoir, The First and the Last, chronicled his struggles with Goring. He died in 1996 at 83. Galland marked August 1943 as the air war's decisive moment. Göring's denial of long-range fighters doomed the Luftwaffe. Adaptation then might have delayed defeat, but denial ensured collapse. Historians, finding Galland's reports and Göring's rebuffs in archives, deemed this a pivotal command failure, costing lives and squandering chances to prolong resistance. It exemplified how leaders, by rejecting inconvenient truths, can lead their forces to ruin,